Today we're going to talk about some of the most common lies and misconceptions in the music production industry. And stick around even if you're a pro, because you might want to hear all of this. So roll the intro and let's talk about it. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because I see more and more people falling for these lies and like borderline scams. And it doesn't matter if you're a pro or a newbie in the music production, it is the same. I've seen and I've heard from my friends that they have fallen for those scams or lies over and over again, thinking that something might be different, but no, like it's always the same. And some of these things are going to be marketing tactics that are like twisting the truth, that are making you think that something is better than it is or whatever. So the first marketing tactic that I want to debunk is the Class A marketing tactic. When I was 17, so 20 years ago, I got myself my first microphone, so I had to buy a preamp. And the people at the store told me to buy a 4-channel mixer that has preamps in it, because it had the most bang for the buck. And on the box it said that it had Class A preamps, which at the time made me think that it had the best preamps money can buy, because there can't be anything above Class A, right?
Not this time.
And yeah, you can say that I was young and dumb, because I was young and very dumb, and it was just a marketing trick. So let me explain. So simplified, Class A refers to the way that the amplification of your signal works in said preamp. There are quite a few amplification classifications, and I will not bore you to death and go all scientific on you and tell you how they all work, but what you need to know is that most of them can be found in pro audio. The most common ones are the Class A, Class AB, and Class B, and of course Class D. The differences on how they operate are drastic, but they are not as important for this video. But all you need to know is that the Class D amplifiers have the highest power efficiency, which means they're not going to heat up as much as the others do. And on the other hand, Class A is the most linear amplification method, but it is also prone to distortion and noise, as all of them are. So basically, they were not lying when they said that it had Class A preamps, but the way that it was plastered on the box suggested that the unit itself had the best preamps that the money can buy, because it had like a crown on top of it and was glowing and all of that. Like, from this point of view, it's just nonsensical, but that's what companies do. And it was Behringer, and it was like $200, and it blew up on me and almost took my finger with it. Well, this is from something else. But from that point forwards, I refer to that company as the B word, because I do not want to go near it. Do not even fucking mention it to me, because it'll give me PTSD. Now look, I must say that I didn't buy any cheap gear in a while, so I don't know if they still plaster like Class A on top of the boxes, and if they're like trying to make you think that it's something better than it is. But rest assured that they will find a way to trick you into something. So don't believe things that you see on the boxes. Just like test shit out, and if it works, it works, and if it's good, it's good. If not, don't buy it. But speaking of cheap, let's talk about the rule of diminishing returns. And you probably heard about this phrase over and over again, especially on YouTube, mostly by YouTubers that are trying to sell you something. And most of them have stopped using the term cheaper, and instead they'll use the term dearer, which is simply ridiculous. Now, the reason why I'm including this is because there's a narrative that is being pushed by a bunch of them that cheaper always equals better, which is almost never the case. As an example, if you're buying a guitar, you have a bunch of YouTube channels that have some great content, but most of the time they're trying to sell you stuff, and cheap stuff will always sell the best. So what they'll always do is say that the dearer guitars sound and play the same or really similar to those that are 4 times the price. Not only that the cheaper instruments and equipment doesn't pass the same QA as the more expensive ones, but everything on that guitar is going to be cheaper. The electronics, the wood, the frets, the nut, and even the truss rod, which in the end might let the neck of your guitar bend and swirl in a way that the only thing that you can do is send it to a guitar tech. And most of the time on those cheap guitars, the frets are not going to be filed properly, so they will dig into your skin while you're playing, which makes it a miserable fucking experience. And sure, you can upgrade everything, and you can upgrade the pickups, and you can upgrade the electronics, the frets, and everything, but like, it just makes it to be another guitar. It's not the same guitar anymore.
If you've had that broom for 20 years, have you actually swept any roads with it?
Well, of course. I've maintained it for 20 years. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
the hell can it be the same bloody broom then?
So why not just wait a bit and do not go for that FOMO or impulse buy and just buy something better once you have enough money. Now, if you translate that to pro audio, you'll understand that you will get cheaper components, poor QA, and it will either break faster or it will completely fuck up your signal, and you do not want that. And the same thing happened to me when I was 17. Yeah, that one exploded, but the next one that I got was also bad. It was basically the same amount of money, and it was a Yamaha, but it just had a poor sound quality, and I had to replace it and get an actual preamp that was good. And all the things that I had when I was buying cheap, I had to replace them with something else that was better. So basically what I'm saying is, if you buy cheap, you will need to buy it at least twice. And I'm not saying that you should save up and just wait and do not go into music production until you get enough money to buy a Neumann set of microphones or a set of ATC speakers. I'm not saying that, but I'm telling you, bear in mind that cheap stuff is going to break faster and is probably going to completely fuck up your signal. But the general rule of thumb is that you should not buy from big brand companies because you are buying, like, you're paying for the brand name. If you go with a smaller company, you're probably gonna get the same stuff for much less, or if you're paying the same amount of money, you're gonna get more stuff or better sound or whatever. And the other thing is, just try before you buy. Please just try your stuff before you buy. Do not buy it over the internet because you will never know if it's actually good or not. And now, after I said all of this, let me contradict myself and debunk a huge misconception that says that expensive gear will give you a better sound. It will not, and this is why. Your studio or your sound in that studio is going to be as worth or as good as the weakest link that you have inside of it. So as an example, if you have a great pair of studio monitors and an awesome digital to analog converter, but then you connect them with the cheapest audio cables, the sound you're going to get is going to be as good as that cable is. This is also true if we're recording. If you get a $5,000 microphone and a $1,000 preamp, and then you use cheap analog to digital converters, your sound is going to be as good or as bad as those converters are. And while most of the professionals will agree with this, I will need to make one thing clear. This does not mean that you need to buy the most expensive gear, because the weakest link might be you. As an example, you rent a studio with an engineer, and the studio itself has the best microphones, and it has a Neve desk or a SSL desk, it doesn't matter. And then you hire a drummer that cannot hold a beat. And then you will have a perfect recording of a drummer that's terrible. Or maybe you hire Steve Jordan or Vinnie Colaiuta, and you track that perfectly in that perfect studio. And then you come back to your studio to mix it, and the mix turns out bad. That's because you are the weakest link. And look, I'm not saying this to be an asshole. The reason why I'm saying this is because I see more and more people buying plugins and buying hardware units so aggressively, or like hysterically even, that it's so obvious that they're trying to fix a problem, but they do not understand that they are the problem. Because nowadays, most of the DAWs have an array of plugins that can get the job done. And sure, some gear or some plugins are going to get you from point A to point B faster, and some of them are going to make you more productive. Some of them are going to make you more creative. But do not go out and buy a plugin or a piece of hardware because you're not happy with your sound, because you haven't mastered the gear and the plugins that you already have, and you are the problem. And this takes me to another misconception, and that is that bass is very hard to mix. And if you think about it, most of the instruments, vocals, and most of the drums live in the mid-range, and they are all competing with each other to be heard in your mix. But when it comes to the low end, you only have two instruments that live in that space, the kick and the bass. But those also need to be heard in the mid-range, so they will translate properly to all of the consumer devices. Therefore, the only logical thing to say is that the mid-range is actually the hardest thing to mix, because it is. The reason why it's so hard for you to mix the low end is because you have a bad set of speakers or terrible acoustics. And it still boggles me that most people didn't realize that by now, and that they're still eating up all of the tutorials that can be found on the internet. And some of them are good, but most of them will never tell you that it's the easiest thing to mix. If you have a set of speakers that can go that low in a room that is acoustically treated, good, or if you have a good pair of headphones. As an example, the kick in most of the popular music nowadays lives between like 40 and 50 hertz. Like that's gonna be the fundamental, and it's gonna be the most massive there. And let's say that you have a set of speakers that are rated to go as low as 30 hertz. That doesn't mean that those speakers will reproduce those 30 hertz perfectly, because that 30 hertz mark is the so-called corner frequency, which means that depending on how it's measured and the slope, you're gonna have a 3 to 6 dB drop at 30 hertz. And 6 dB in acoustics is basically double the volume. And since most of you are using speakers that are not even rated to 30 and they're not designed to go that low, you're all trying to get that mix or the bass mixed without really hearing it and just using your eyes instead of your ears. So what I'm saying is, if your studio has great acoustic treatment, you should get a pair of better speakers that like a three-way speakers that can go lower, or get a subwoofer. Or if you're not sure about your acoustics, and you probably are not, just get a good pair of headphones like the Audi's LCD-X or the Neumann NDH20 or 30, because those are gonna help you actually hear the bass and mix it properly. So instead of asking that man for the fish every fucking day, maybe learn how to fish. And that's like, it's just going to be easy for you because it is that easy. But while we're on the topic of mixing, let's talk about the phrase that we all heard, we'll fix it in the mix. And this one is especially terrible. You cannot fix it if the track is bad. If it's badly recorded or played badly, you will not be able to fix it in the mix. When it comes to live music, yeah, sure, you can edit everything to be in the groove. But as an example, you can't really edit how hard the cymbals are being played by the drummer. Sure, you can lower the volume of the cymbals in the mix, but it's still going to be obvious that the cymbals are just too harsh because they were played too hard. And I can't tell you how many times I had to mix a drummer that had great timing, but he either hit the cymbals too hard or maybe he hit the toms way harder than the snare. Like, drummers, if you're watching this, please, the kick and the snare are much more important than the fucking cymbals, man. Like, don't smack those cymbals. Honestly, I'm just like losing my mind and I'm getting PTSD again because I just remember like some of the mixes that I had to do. But another example is that the bassists love to dig into the strings like there's no tomorrow. And the matter of fact is, if you dig into the strings, you're gonna have a harsher and like more mid-range rich tone, which in some cases is great. But in most of the cases, the lighter you play, the better the sound is, because the sound is gonna be more round and more bassy, and you're playing a bass, therefore, like, come on. And then on the other hand, you have hip-hop and electronic music, and in most of the cases, the things that I hear is just like, first of all, bad samples, and then trying to mix the song with a shitty sample and trying to like compress the kick and saturate the kick and add more bass to it and all. Why not just change the kick? Just change the sample, bro. Like, it's that easy. And then on top of that, you have an abuse of melodies. You have a melody here, like a bunch of melodies, and they're all competing with each other, and there's like no counterpoint with them. They're not working with each other, but against each other. Like, they try to do like a jazz thing, like when everybody solos at the same time, but it doesn't sound like that, because first of all, it's not jazz. Secondly, like, come on, it's hip hop or electronica or whatever. Like, just pick one melody and that's it, because it's impossible to mix that, because if everything is working against each other, yeah, like, no, that's not gonna work. And that's one more of the misconceptions that I wanted to talk about in this video, and that's that you do not need a producer. Yes, you do, because the producer is gonna tell you not to have 300 melodies, or which sample to use, or how to play something, or which lines to use and which not to use if you're rapping, or how to sing something. And the point of having a producer is to take your song from here to here and make it a great song. So yes, you do need, like, I don't even need to talk about this anymore. Yes, you do need to have a producer. And since we're talking about musicians and this is a music channel, I'm gonna end with this, and this is gonna be a short one. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you're practicing in a wrong way, and if you're practicing a piece or whatever in a wrong way and you're not playing it right, it will get embedded into your fingers, your voice, or your brain, or whatever, and it will stay like that. And it will take you much longer to unlearn everything that you have learned. And it all connects to like music production and all that. Practice makes permanent. It doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. But thank you for watching, and thank you to all my patrons that are still supporting me, even though I haven't released a video in a while, like 6 months or even more, because I had a bunch of issues with the studio. Like, this is a video studio. This was my old vocal booth. The main studio is in another room, and I just can't make it work because I'm not even gonna bore you with that. So I wanted to wait, but then I realized, yeah, like, I'm doing nothing with my life, so I have to do something, and I wanted to do something for YouTube. So I will continue making videos. I will see at which rate, but thank you for supporting me. If you want to support me, the link is down in the description of the video, and also there's a website link for my website if you want to check me out, if you want to check out my music, and you want to check out like all the things that I do, or if you want to buy some music from me, I'm using Beatstars. So yeah, the links are down in the description. So yeah, thank you for watching, and peace out, and bye.